So, Mr. Powers, you call me out of my office today. You tell me you got some sort of writing thing going on or something?
That's right, Mr. B. That's right. It's Pearl time. I am excited.
Pearl?
Excited? That's right.
So
Pearl
you're
time.
telling me for Valentine's Day I need to get my wife pearls for I can't afford pearls.
Did you not look at what I sent you? Mr. B, Pearl is a writing program.
It's a writing program.
That's right. You didn't
I thought it was like something that you find in the deep sea, like a Tahitian pearl. What is this pearl thing? Help me out.
So here's the deal, Mr. B. We know that students write in all subjects, okay? If you're in history, if you're in science, you know you're writing about this, okay?
True.
We know stuff. Writing is how you show what you know. You know stuff in all subjects. We write in all subjects, all right? But we want to get everybody on the same page so that we're writing in the same way. So Pearl is just a method to do that. It's something that we're going to use. It's going to be something so easy that even a teacher like Mr. Boatwright could understand.
Boatwright could understand?
That's right.
I only see him play an instrument every now and then. He's going to be able to write?
He's going to be able to write. Yes, with
good.
this,
okay.
That's how it's going to work. So I'm excited to get this out, and we're going to get this started, and we're going to walk everybody through the first time so that they see what this looks like. We get it all done right together. So let's go ahead and get this thing going.
So you're telling me if I'm a student sitting in any teacher's class, I'm going to be able to practice this and become good at it?
That's right. And what this Pearl method is, it's going to be useful in those classes. It's also going to be useful as body paragraphs in your FSA essay. So it'll be helpful for that too. So let's start by showing what Pearl is.
Go for it.
So Pearl the P stands for point. Now that's just your topic sentence. We've all heard topic sentence. It's the same thing that you've already seen, but P stands for point. That's your topic sentence. E is evidence. That's where you include evidence from the text. You tell where it comes from. You include the evidence. It could be paraphrased or quoted. And this is something that we're all very familiar with. A is analysis. That's where you explain and elaborate on your evidence. R is repeat. So one piece of evidence is good, but we don't want to just be good. We don't want to just be okay. So another piece of evidence and explaining that evidence again makes the writing even better.
So let me ask you a quick question.
Go ahead.
Say it's a prompt on sports. I love sports.
Yep.
And it's about the Miami Dolphins being the best football team of all time.
Okay, that article will never exist, but continue.
You're just a Bills fan here. But what I'm saying is, you want me to provide evidence. What if I know things, Mr. Powers, about the Dolphins? Can I use that as evidence, or does it have to come from the writing?
That is a great question. No, all of your information needs to be based on the text. So even if you know facts just from your own knowledge about the Miami Dolphins, that might help you kind of form your brainstorm and frame out your idea.
Gotcha.
But when you use evidence, it needs to be something that directly came from the text.
Okay.
Great question.
I got it.
So, and then our very last sentence there is going to be L, the link. The link is just a summary sentence. It's where you pull everything back in together, back towards your topic.
Gotcha.
So now it is time to get this started, but before we begin writing, actually the very first step that we need to do is to read the prompt. And sometimes they're tricky. A lot of times they put the prompt at the end. So we're going to go look to the end, and we see that our prompt, and Mr. B, if you can read the prompt for this text.
I'll go ahead. So for the purpose of this exercise, our prompt is: write a paragraph arguing whether the FDA should allow the sale of genetically modified salmon, or that they should ban their sale. Cite evidence from the text in your response.
Excellent. We see that after the article in there. You should see it on your screen. That's our prompt. Now we know what we need to look for. So now as we're reading this article, we can be keeping an eye out for evidence that has to do with the pros and cons of this genetically modified salmon. So even if you have an idea in your head already, we need to read the article and we need to find our evidence there. So we're actually going to start reading this article. We're going to do the first half together so we can see what it looks like, and then you'll do the second half together in your classes. So, Mr. B, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Sure.
And we can bounce this thing back and forth, paragraph at a time, and let's read through this. Let's see if we can find some evidence.
Okay, here we go. A company called Aqua Bounty Technologies has created a new type of salmon that grows twice as fast as regular salmon. Now it wants permission to sell the salmon as food.
All right. But many people, including some scientists, say the company should not be allowed to farm or sell the salmon until we know more about the possible effects it could have on the environment and on human health. You know, I think I'm going to underline that sentence, Mr. B. That sounds like something that could be evidence.
Would you like a highlighter?
I'm going to underline it.
Okay.
I appreciate it. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and underline that sentence because that sounds like a negative. You know, maybe they need to know more about this before they start selling it.
Good point. So you're kind of marking the text then.
Yeah, yeah, just seeing, I might use this evidence, so I'm going to underline it so I can find it easy.
Okay, we'll continue. The controversial fish called the Aqua Advantage salmon has been genetically modified. That means some of its DNA has been artificially altered. DNA is the information stored in the cells of an organism that determines the characteristics of that organism.
Wow, they're changing DNA. That's interesting.
Oh, who knows what this is going to be.
The salmon is also transgenic, which means genetic material from a different type of organism has been artificially added to the salmon's DNA. That's very odd to me, combining different creatures' DNA
Kinda sounds
together.
Frankenstein-ish,
Yes,
you know?
very Frankenstein-y. Go ahead.
Okay, about 25 years ago, a group of Canadian scientists, Coach Beleska, were you involved as a Canadian scientist there? Wanted to create a strain of salmon that could survive in fish farms in the cold water off New Brunswick. They took genetic material from the Chinook salmon and from an eel-like fish called the ocean pout and injected it into the eggs of an Atlantic salmon.
Now, that sounds important to me too there, because that's describing what they did specifically to make that salmon. And that sounds, again, a little Frankenstein-y to me about combining that eel fish. So I'm going to go ahead and let's underline that as well. So that way we could use that if we need it. That sounds like something that might make good evidence.
Perfect.
The result was a fast-growing fish that looks and tastes like a regular farmed Atlantic salmon. Some people call it super salmon, while others call it Frankenfish, like you were saying, after the fictional monster created by Dr. Frankenstein.
In the early 1990s, the scientists teamed up with a U.S. company that wanted to produce the eggs commercially and sell them to fish farmers. But they faced a major obstacle. No government had ever approved a genetically modified animal as food.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, which regulates food in the United States, studied the salmon for several years. In 2010, they decided that the salmon was safe to eat and would have no significant impact on the environment. I'm going to stop right there because that sounds like evidence that it's, absolutely.
Huge.
They studied it. They said that it looks good.
The Food and Drug Administration was involved.
And they okayed it. So let's go ahead and underline that, those two sentences right there. As long as it was raised in special facilities and could not accidentally be released into rivers or oceans.
But so many people objected that the FDA decided to reconsider its decision. They asked for comments from the public and received more than 35,000 responses. A lot of responses. Wow. The FDA is still considering these comments and has not yet announced whether it will allow the salmon to be sold as food for humans.
In November 2013, the Canadian government gave Aquabani Technologies permission to produce its transgenic salmon eggs at a hatchery in Prince Edward Island.
The fish live in special tanks inside the hatchery, and there are several filters and barriers designed to make sure transgenic salmon do not enter the natural environment. These fish are used to produce eggs that are then sent to a fish farm in Panama, Central America, where they will grow to full size.
And what do you think about that sentence, that they're in these special tanks where they
filters,
can't get out, so they can't enter the other? That sounds like another pro that these fish can't interact and affect the environment. So I think that might be something to underline as well.
I agree.
Okay, so now it's your turn. There's a little less than half of this article left. We're going to have you and your classes finish this article, popcorn read it out, and then if you see any potential evidence that you think shows a pro or a con of this genetically modified salmon, go ahead and underline it, share that out. So you have 7 minutes. All right, and now we're back. So now we've read the article, we found evidence. Now it's time to start writing. And we don't need to think about, oh, how are we going to start? What are we going to do? We have our Pearl method right here we can follow. We know P, point, that is our first sentence. That's where we're going to answer this prompt and set out our point for our paragraph. It's a topic sentence. It's the same thing that you've done many, many times in writing.
And Mr. Powers, do I have to, is this something I got to memorize, this Pearl thing? Or for starters, is it going to be there for me to see?
Oh, Mr. B, we have lots of resources that we can use, and we're going to help everybody out these first times so we can remember.
Beautiful.
And remember, this is nothing new. It's a topic. We have evidence, we explain the evidence, another piece of evidence, we explain it, we summarize at the end. This is something that we've all done many times in our language arts class and other writing assignments. It's just a new way to look at it with Pearl.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
All right, so we're going to start with our point. Now, we're going to answer the prompt directly. This is an argumentative prompt, so you can pick either side. Now, the example that we're going to do is going to be to pick the side that genetically modified salmon should not be sold. And you all are going to write on the other side, so that way we're not doing the same thing.
Well, I know I don't want to eat no Frankenfish, so I'm good with that.
All right, but remember, even though what you have our ideas, but we need to go to the text and base our ideas about what we see on that test. So let's go ahead and get this started. So our point sentence that's going to answer that prompt directly: genetically modified salmon should definitely not be approved for food because the full effects on health and the environment are not completely understood. Mm-hmm. So that's our point, that's our topic, sets our paragraph on topic, and starts off with a good, strong topic sentence. So now it is your turn. You're going to indent and write your own topic point sentence, arguing that genetically modified salmon is okay. So consider what we've read in the article and just give us one sentence that states that. To get your P point sentence done, we'll give you 2 minutes.
Maybe it's okay. These are some big salmon. I like salmon.
All right, so we've got our point sentence down, started off our paragraph on topic. If I look at my Pearl, next is E, evidence. So we need to prove it. We always need to support our ideas with text evidence. I always tell students we're a lawyer when we write. We need to prove our ideas with evidence. We're also going to include in this that A, that analysis, because you never ever include evidence without explaining it, elaborating on it, and that's the A for analyzing. Okay, if I'm a lawyer, I can't just go slap a knife on the judge's desk and walk right out of there. You know, I need to explain this. I need to say where I find it. How does this prove my point? How does this prove that Mr. B is the criminal to put him away for life? I need to explain my evidence thoroughly.
So if I'm trying to understand you, Mr. Powers, evidence comes directly from the article I read, and the analysis is sort of my opinion about the evidence.
Yeah, you explaining that evidence, connecting it to your topic. That's correct.
Gotcha.
And we have some ways to help you do that. And we're going to show you some examples of ways to cite your evidence and how you can explain that. So if you'll see right here, we've got just some ways that you can do that. Remember, you always include the article title in quotation marks and capitalize it. We always need to say where this evidence is coming from. And we have some examples of how to do that here. According to the article, genetically modified salmon, food, or frankenfish, the text genetically modified salmon, food, or frankenfish explains. In genetically modified food or frankenfish, Conrad states. There we include the last name of the author, kind of add some formality to it. And then down here, there's some ways to explain the evidence, to introduce those explaining sentences, analysis sentences. This information shows, from the information it's clear that, this proves, ways to kind of give your own thoughts and your own ideas of that evidence. Now remember, these are just a couple of ways. The best writers are always going to be using, not being repetitive, but using new ways to introduce and explain their evidence. These are just some ways to help us get started.
So you want to be creative here. You don't want to say things like, and another example is, and another example is. That's kind of boring, isn't it?
We don't want to be repetitive, say, you know, according to the article, this shows, according to the article, this shows every time. We don't want to switch that up. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our example evidence here. And we'll notice this, we're going to do our evidence and our analysis here together. And you'll notice that I use two analysis sentences this time. In that Pearl, every letter isn't necessarily one sentence. This is a recipe. It's a great recipe, but the best chefs are going to spice up their recipe a little bit. You can have 2-point sentences to explain your point a little bit. You can have another analysis sentence to add to that. So for the best examples, we can always add a little bit of spice to make this a little more unique and interesting.
So I always thought, you know, a good, decent paragraph was 5 sentences. It can actually be more than that, is what you're saying?
This is going to, at a minimum, this is 6 sentences because we have our point, evidence, analysis, link.
Gotcha.
So at a minimum, this is 6, but you could certainly go up to even more, you know, maybe 7, 8 sentences.
You could be that chef you were talking about.
That's right. Add a little spice here or there. So let's take a look at this example. So our evidence. In genetically modified salmon, food, or frankenfish, Conrad explains that scientists combine DNA from salmon and an eel-like fish to create a salmon that grows rapidly. Artificially merging genes of different species might create other harmful hidden changes in the DNA. Scientists should study the fish and anyone who eats the fish for years before they can say if they are truly safe. So here was an example of a paraphrased piece of evidence. It's not quoted. It's in my own words. You can either quote or paraphrase your evidence. That's why we don't have this one in quotation marks, because it was taken from the text, but it's in my own words. And then I have 2 analysis sentences afterward to explain how that fits with your topic.
In your opinion, Mr. Powers, is it any stronger if you use a direct quote, or can paraphrasing be as strong?
I think it can be. I think the best thing is to do both. Just like I said, the best chefs don't do the same thing over and over. So if we're going to make a masterpiece here, we're going to do a little bit of everything.
Got you.
So now it's your turn. Remember, you're taking the side that they should be food. So consider your best evidence, and we're going to give you 5 minutes to write your evidence and analysis sentences now. Go to it. Okay, so now it's time for that R section of the Pearl, which is just repeating. Here, we're going to give another piece of evidence. We don't want to just only use one piece of evidence. We're going to make this great and give another piece of evidence to support ourselves. It's the same thing, another evidence and analysis. The only other thing that I'd mention is this is a great part to maybe use a transition to connect those two pieces of evidence together and show how they connect. And you'll see examples of that here. So let's go ahead and
So are you saying, Mr. Powers, if I really want to write a strong essay when we take this assessment in April, I really want to repeat and have multiple forms of evidence? One's not good enough?
Yeah, in your body paragraphs, having more than one piece of evidence, having two pieces of evidence in some or all of your body paragraphs is a really strong move.
Got it.
So let's take a look. However, that same article, Genetically Modified Salmon, Food or Frankenfish, also mentions his company has conducted many experiments to show that the fish are not harmful to humans. This means that some of the research is biased because it came from the company that made the salmon. So there we see some transitions. However, and also to show the relationship between the pieces of evidence, we see a good explaining sentence, an analysis sentence that elaborates and shows how that piece of evidence shows that maybe this research isn't quite the best to be trusted. So now it's your turn. You're going to do the same thing. So go ahead. You're going to do another piece of evidence, another analysis, explaining, elaborating sentence afterward. We'll give you 5 minutes to complete that next part of the paragraph. Go ahead. Okay, all right, last sentence. You ready, Mr. B?
I feel like I've lost 10 pounds in this process, but I'm ready.
All right, we're ready to finish this thing up. So our L is our final sentence. We're almost done. That is the link sentence where we're going to wrap this whole thing up. It's just a summary sentence, nothing new. We're going to take everything that we've done and we're going to tie it in to revisit our point to bring this whole paragraph together. So let's take a look at our final link sentence here. We've got together, this proves that modified salmon is not ready to be considered for consumption until it can be more thoroughly tested. So I bring that evidence in, I revisit the topic. I don't say it again in the same words. I don't want to be repetitive, but I bring it all back together to the topic. That's it. So now it's your turn. This is just one sentence, so you've got 2 minutes. Go ahead and write that summarizing link sentence to finish up your first Pearl paragraph. Boom, let's get it done.
Good luck.
Well,
Mr. Powers, awesome job.
wait, well, no,
I'm
Mr.
done, right?
No,
this is
sit,
done.
No,
I got
no,
my
no,
paper.
no,
What?
sit down.
I'm
Sit
all
down.
pearled up
No.
now. I'm good. I know it's not for Valentine's.
This is not a perfect pearl. This is, it's got some scratches
I
in it.
know oysters don't give perfect
sit
pearls.
Down. No,
really?
Sit down.
All right.
Sit
yes.
down.
Okay. I'm
Sit
sorry.
down.
I'm sitting.
All right.
What else has to be done?
Any real language arts student out there knows when we're done, we're not done. Okay, this
What do you
thing.
mean when we're done, we're not done? I'm done.
So this now we've finished writing, but we need
Okay.
to take a look at this thing. We're gonna
Okay.
look it over. We're gonna find, because we did not write this thing perfectly. We're gonna look it over. We're gonna look for those capital letters, commas, correct punctuation. We're gonna edit it.
Wait a minute. I analyzed. I provided evidence. I transitioned like you said.
Yeah.
I thought this was a perfect paragraph.
No, sir,
What are
not
you
yet.
I got to have proper spelling?
I know, life's tough. Life's tough. All right, so
Go ahead.
We're gonna take a minute. We're gonna look back over it. We're gonna find any of those mistakes that we made. We're gonna fix them up. Take a minute to edit because we all make mistakes. This video is certainly an example of that. And now you are going to go and also, I would like you guys to mark each of those things. It's your point sentence. Go ahead and write a P off in the margin, put an arrow, E-A-R-L. Go ahead and mark each part of that paragraph so we can see how this Pearl works. Then, if you guys have any time remaining, I'd love for you to share an example or share with your partner to see an example of what a good Pearl paragraph looks like. Now, Mr. B, that's
Are we
a wrap.
done? You know, and I will say, Mr. Powers, it makes sense to go back and mark because that gives me more practice and familiarizes me with this Pearl method. So thank you. I really thought this was going to be a gift for my wife,
Yeah.
but I've learned more today about writing than I have in a long time.
Write her a Pearl paragraph for Valentine's Day. There you go. That's it. That's it.
Good
All right.
thinking.
It has
Thank
not
you,
been
buddy.
horrible working with you.
No.
All right. Have a good
From
one.
a dolphin to a bill.
There you go. See, everybody can get together. AFC East. Here it is. Done.